PR Connections Radio presents. This episode of Liberating Menopause is brought to you by Classy Communications PR and Advertising. Classy Communications provides public relations and marketing solutions for businesses, professionals, and non-profit organizations. They can deliver the true meaning of your business with press releases, social media marketing, web development, email marketing, book publishing, and much more. Wherever your potential clients are, they can help you connect with them. Visit classycommunications.net to learn more about their suite of services that can help your business stand out from the rest. Classy Communications is your solution for business success.
Hi, welcome to a new episode of Liberating Menopause. My name is Lisa Vasquez. I am your host. I am looking forward to talking on this subject. Today, we are talking about, of course, women in the workplace, corporate leaders, and universal health leaders, looking for everyone to be paying attention to this one. I recently went over a report that had come out. It's a 10-year report of women in the workplace. This is put out by McKinsey & Company. They're a global management company that has been for years consulting. It's a consulting firm that provides information on insights and research on various business and societal topics. What really intrigued me was the fact that this highlight trends in women's representation at different levels of corporate leaderships, but historically menopause wasn't on the list and it has been overlooked in corporate America for a long time. So this is why, again, I bring up that it's so important to keep talking about this, bringing this conversation up, because the traditional workplace policies have rarely ever touched on our menopausal health. Companies need to reinforce wellness programs with education and understanding about this, how it impacts the employees, the loss of the industry for people who are calling in because of these downfalls that they're falling into. There are 84% of employees that are really looking forward and would like policies to change, but then we have 72% of women who are still in fear of the stigma that holds up against us on this subject. They're worried that the companies won't recognize them as the need because of their menopausal inclusive illnesses that are taking place. So they're really concerned about how can we get women to really speak more about this? If there's no voice in this conversation, we can't open up for change. Our voice is what creates that change. And there's 84% of women that really want that. It's that 72% of women that we really need to empower about this conversation, because this is a biological, natural process that happens to us. This isn't a stigma or something that should hold us back. I know in corporate, women fear that they might be coming out with a hot flash right before a big meeting, and they're worried about what the men would say if that happened. And these are not some things that we can really suppress, because when the body's ready to flush, it will flash out on us and do its thing. And it's pretty hard to cover that up. By understanding this and really knowing that what has changed in the workplace, they actually said not a lot. They actually said that in this report about women, that their biggest fear in moving up is held back because of their gender. They still have that fear. And the thing with that is that the upcoming new generations, they don't have a lot of hope in this, because there still hasn't been any big advancements for women. Then we have women with disabilities. They're really lost in this community of being in advancements. And so are women of color. And they have held this to the standards of it could be race-based. Then we have there's other communities that are being held back on this subject. And it's a shame that the menopausal policies are not in place. Nobody's ever considered this. I mean, they've been studying this for 10 years, and I have to wonder why. Why is menopause not part of a conversation? And I know that when I mentioned to you in the past, I have been doing research from books that were out in 1976. And aside from that the stories have been out there, people are living with this in their homes. Every male who's married or has that family member, sister, mother, grandmother, I mean, everybody has been affected by this. So this conversation, why it has been swept under the rug, it needs to come out now, and women are really taking more action to do this. And this is what Liberating Menopause is all about, bringing up this conversation, to open it up, to take away that stigma, to take away the myths and the mishaps of believing what's really happening with us. We don't need to hide it anymore. We need to really speak more about it. I am actually joining with New Zealand, and we're creating a circle for women where there is no shame. There is a place to be able to speak out and be able to be entrusted by the conversation. There's no recordings of this. There's no replays of it because of the privacy of this conversation. It's called the Wild Wise Women's Menopause Circle. And we'll be posting that on my website here. So if anybody's interested in joining this circle, it will be coming out May 27th. It's very intriguing and very interesting. And it's just actually for that 72% of women who are feared by this conversation. This is where we want to teach you the language to be able to open up that conversation and never have to worry about what you're saying about it, because it's all about you. It's all about that biological process. It's all about sticking up for women, because again, I told you that all our menopause and changes, they are not where they're all bio individually. So they're all unique. So everybody who has a voice in this is speaking out, but it's all unique conversations. And when we can bring those 72% women who are feared by this and held back in actually taking action to move up in their corporation leaderships and things that they want to do, we want to empower that by giving them the confidence of knowing that this conversation is really being opened up. We are fueling the movement. And by bringing you into the language and being able to talk about it outspokenly, this is the beauty of what these circles will be presenting, because a lot of places don't know how to address this. I was bringing back in the days when, I didn't really understand that this was really a problem. So in my cycles, I had a lot of cramps. So I was taking off a lot of days, because that's what you have to do. I didn't really think about the loss that was taking place. I know that as a soul mammographer in some of my jobs, I had to close down my whole little clinic because I wasn't there. I was the sole mammographer. So having coverage was a problem for them, because it's very hard to actually capture a lot of mammographers. I have a dying, this field of mammography is really dying out, and we need to really enforce it and bring it back up, because women need us as mammographers to be there for them, to help them get past this breast cancer era and support them in their screenings and baselines. But as I was saying, that industry of the loss and how much funding is being lost because of that day that I didn't show up. I couldn't be there. I was in pain. So I had to, and, having that conversation, I really didn't think that, I call up and say, I got cramps. I can't go. I have a headache. But no notes were taken and nothing was really brought out of that. And I'm sure that there was a lot of other women calling in saying the same thing. And there was no database to be collected. How many women are calling in on this same subject? So capturing that with leadership is really important. I mean, then you could if women are honestly calling in and saying, I'm having a headache, it's my, I'm in menopause. I mean, as I told you before, menopause doesn't have an age. So if we're looking to just see that at a 50-year-old, you have to remember that you have young women in the field who could have had a full hysterectomy and is going through menopause also. So understanding and remembering this is not an age thing. This is a biological process, and people go through this. And it does affect our daily work in different, capacities of that job that has to be done that can't. Right now, a lot of journalists are facing this. They're not able to read a lot of the prompters that are right behind them, right in front of them, because of their vision. There's people that are on the phones all the time, hearing and listening to things that can actually get them into a higher stress level than what's happening. So if they're already feeling stressed in the morning from just what's happening from their start of the day, they could be calling in, and a lot of phone calls are being missed because they're not there to answer it. But they don't want to feel, they are stopping themselves from going in because they know if I get on that phone and I have an upset caller, they're going to be stressing me out. And right now, I'm not in the mood for that. So we have a lot more of productivity loss with that conversation. These are things that really need to be looked at because we are women and we come with this backpack and you just don't know what's in it. And when we come to a new job, whatever that job may be, there's going to be some disruptors from our life that will be in the company's life and giving them a disruption for sure on their daily productivity. So, that finance and all that stuff to accumulate in this conversation is so important. There's only 2 companies recently that I know of, CVS and Medovia. These 2 companies have actually started to take action. They're the first 2 companies that I've studied and heard about them taking interest in helping women in their departments, getting them the education and support, training their leaders to understand these support systems. The loss of work in a day in just the UK, for instance, accounts for 14 million lost work days. Could you imagine that? That's it. 1.88 billion in economic losses. And earnings decline with women who seek medical care for menopause. This is another big problem we have because we go to the doctors and recently they've been scheduled for an amount of time, like maybe 10 minutes tops, right? And the woman comes in and she's finally ready to ask her questions about menopause and he doesn't have time for that. That has to be rescheduled to another day. And is that day that she's rescheduled, is she only going to have 10 minutes or are they going to grant her at least an hour or 30 minutes to have that time? So all this is cutting out and being incorporated into a business attitude in the healthcare system. And this is something that is going to create unnecessary conflicts because medical is medical and menopause really needs medical attention and mostly someone to listen to them, to really understand them and hear them. I'm sorry to say, but recently, because of our medical system and we don't have a lot of good doctors to really support the midlife crisis that we're in. I recently spoke with a 44-year-old and I was kind of saddened by the fact that she may be having all the issues, but she was given all 3 hormones as a replacement therapy. And then I was excited to hear about that. And I wanted to know what she tested with a baseline study of her chemistry first. And she said no. So that's the part that saddened me because these are things that, okay, this woman apparently in that conversation with the doctor sparked on some things. And what happens is we get these shut up pills. So they just, whoever they are, hit her with all 3 hormones. And now she's taking them. She's not happy with them because she wasn't sure that she's feeling really well with that. This is why we were consulting and talking about this. But again, saddened by the fact of what happens if she's estrogen dominant. There was no levels, no gauges, nothing was tested. So I really enforce this conversation about making sure that you're getting chemistry panels of your hormones. And I know universally that we always are sent to the generalized hormonal testing, which is usually a urine test or possibly a saliva test. And from there, they are diagnosed and giving you your results with whatever they recommend with the amount and percentage of hormones that they're going to delegate to you. But there's so many other tests that can be done that women aren't aware of, that when you go for hormones, you're going for a specific need. And from what I've seen so far in the 45 years of my radiology practice, looking at women, talking with women, they've all been generalized and pretty much set on the same track. I mean, it's only because I study all this that I know of the Dutch test. This is a dry urine test. But the the detailed look that brings in on a woman's body is so deep and so it gives you so much to create that recipe for a woman's health. Then you do have the saliva test, and you do have the general urine test, but then there's also an oats test. It's a hair and mineral test that checks out the minerals. And if your minerals are imbalanced, you can have, of course, hormonal, if that imbalances your hormones. So knowing all these specific ways that these tests can be done, this is important, but we are not educated on that enough. And this is why I like to bring this up. This is why I wanted to create Liberating Menopause, because I wanted to bring this conversation live to talk about what's really out there, what opportunities we do have as women, and mostly being able to have this conversation and get our point across of what we're really in need of. So I'd like to talk about, I also, if anybody's on Facebook, I have a Modern Menopause Evolution group program. I have a lot of details on that where I educate in different things such as bone density testing, hysterectomies, hormone therapy. Right now, they actually just changed the name from hormone replacement therapy to hormone therapy, because this is something that they feel is more of like giving you vitamins. It's a different thing. They don't want it. We don't want to be replacing. We want to give you therapy to recover from whatever imbalances you're having. Now, this isn't a conversation that I'm supporting to push you into any of this. I'm bringing the awareness, the information, and the education so you do know that it exists and it's out there, because there's so much controversy in that subject of therapy. And I just want women to know that if somebody is going to go to the doctors and they're looking for this help and they are talking with their doctors, I don't want you to fall in the category of my 44-year-old who wasn't, just put on some hormones and had never been tested. Because again, you could have a lot of estrogen going on, and now you've just dominated even more, which can breathe and lead you into more complications in your body, and you don't even know it, because you are feeling some type of relief, but there are dangers ahead. And this is why when we talk about therapy, we don't use that as prevention, because it is something that is still, they want to make sure that there are actually situations that this is being used for, whatever that may be, from vaginal health to hot flashes to different changes that a woman goes through. But as for preventative, they're still universally not recommending it that way. Sorry about that. So understanding all these things that can be done for women is so important, especially by speaking out about these processes, by normalizing our conversation about menopause, implementing policies, I know flexible schedules is a hard, long shot for a job to consider for a woman. And that could possibly be why it's not even a big subject talked about in the workplace, because we really need to fluctuate somehow without having daily trips to the doctor. I mean, schedules have to open up to be lenient, to give us that time to get to those screening appointments and have that conversation with the doctor. We have that 9-to-5 job, and that's all the hours of the doctor's operations. So no doctors are open offices after 6 o'clock. So if we can't get there, then women keep putting it off. Everything being screened has to be done in the daytime. But with a full workload, women need to have their paychecks fully stashed with every drop that they need in the hours they put in. It's hard. But when policies are put in place for people, we can create that change for a safe space. And this is why women who are looking to come into companies are really hesitant. Empty nesters, they're looking for support. Corporations that are supporting this. And as I said, I've only known of 2 recently, and I was really happy to hear with the menopause education, clearing the leaders and really teaching them what to understand and look for in their workers. It's really important that this conversation, again, is opened up. Why menopause should be a part of our conversation is it's just often overlooked. And in workplace discussions, this can really create more productivity. This can really bring more of a positive effect. And it can really make a career more outstanding for women who really want to stay there long term, but sometimes have to actually leave the job. We're losing ambitious people, ambitious senior leaders who can really take the lead, but because of what we're going through and what changes, they'd rather not deal with that and rather just step away. So the more we can have support in this industry, the more healthier the business industry can develop and really produce everything that we need from that company, instead of having that big loss. And noting that, as I said, this is a 10-year study that this global management company looks at, but it's in diversity and other sources for corporate women, and it's not focusing on their health. So I'm hoping my conversation will reach them somehow. We really need to talk to that global company and bring this to their attention, because there's new studies and there's new evidence that this is very important to get this message out and develop. Wow, these habits of studies that suggest that less than 3% of Americans maintain optimal health habits, only less than 3%. Do you know that we have chronic illnesses, 60% in the USA? 60% adults have chronic illnesses, living with this, at least one. Obesity, the CDC, they say that there's 42% of the US adults, they're obese, with 68% of classified as overweight or obese. This is things that we want to change in the system of health, because by really getting women to understand those 5 phases that they go through, the shifts that are happening, and the things that if we're not paying attention to that perimenopause and the little signs and shifts that are occurring, this is how it can snowball into big effects. We have mental and emotional well-being. I was just at an event this weekend, and most of the consults women wanted to have with me were all about that mental and emotional wellness. Their reactions of what one of them had so much fear in her look when she was talking to me that I was so concerned about her, because she's concerned because she knows she reacts. And this is what we've all been trained to. We all react. This is just our nature, to just react. Nobody stops to think. Nobody steps back to take a moment just to really listen to whatever's happening in the mind. They just react. And so her fear was, she wants to get a hold of that. So by understanding the well-being that this takes, I'm sure in the workplace, this is happening all the time, and people get in trouble for that. I know, because of where I come from. In my environment, we have a very high tone, and we're very strong in that tone. And then when I came to the West Coast, I felt like I was scaring more people, because in where I come from, on the East Coast side of things, this is how we talk, and nobody's really intimidated by our conversation. But when you come with that intimidated voice and you come into a more calmer setting, where sunlight is happening all day long and people are in a happy space, you come and just things that you say can really scare them off, like you're really attacking. And you're not attacking. This is just the environment of what you've been used to. And so coming there, again, it's a cultural change. It's an environmental change. And getting a hold of that when you're in the workplace, being looked at like, you're being mean. You're not being mean. But again, you're having menopausal changes, and these reactions can come from that. And that's not saying just because of how I was talking about my environment, this is a woman's problem. And these women want to really get a hold of that. There's 23% of US adults who experience mental illnesses annually. Then we have healthy habits, and that is only less than 3%. Only less than 3% of Americans actually hold on to optimal health. And so these are big statistics gone from big institutes. The studies, I studied in one book, and back in 2020, it was 50% on the statistics of the US adult chronic illness, of the one that they may have. Today, it's 60%. The world is changing so much. Back in, I think it was 1990, we used to be the 18th in the state of living longer for the Americans. And by 2015, those statistics changed. Sorry, I got to get you back on numbers with that one. But just knowing how from 1990, the shift has taken place in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. It's a big change. It's a big shift. And with all these illnesses that are occurring, it's so important to really understand taking care of yourself, working yourself, and really, if you're feeling good about yourself and you're living in a good place with your health, that's great. But always remember, we're in life to keep progressing, and that's where we progress and go toward optimal health. No matter what, once we hit menopause, it's only one day, and that one day just ends it all. It's not a big transition like perimenopause, where it takes a couple of years to go through. Menopause is that one day, it's over. It's a transition of one whole year where there's no menstruation taking place. The system has closed down, but it's one day. And so with that one day, knowing that, women believe that, okay, I'm done. This is it. I mean, I can't believe that they feel that that's the end of it, but it's not, because we still have to grow and progress for our bone health, our skin and hair, our heart health, the vascular system. Everything needs to be progressing at this point instead of digressing. But when I've talked to women over all these years, most of them at menopause usually told me that was it. They don't do anything else. I mean, that exercise and movement. That's why in the past, people can't get up from their chairs. They're stuck. They're trying to get up. People start sticking. One day, the other day, I turned my neck and I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt the crack. And what did every doctor tell me? The sticking. I was like, oh my gosh. So now I have to do more neck exercises, because that really, shocked me. I was like, wow, what was that? All I did was turn. But I felt stuck for a minute. And he says, because with age, these are the things that start to happen. So I was like, wow, that's really deep stuff. So neck exercises is on my new agenda. Besides, I do work out and do all those things, but so many women do not. They believe that they don't need to, and you just don't understand how much the body needs movement. That movement and action is really what's going to keep us going. At this event I was just speaking of, I was at this last weekend, I was actually having a small dance with an 85-year-old. I was having so much fun with her. She's 85 years old, and I hope if you do go in my Facebook group, you'll be able to see this video, because I'm dancing with her, and she is, I asked people to guess her age, and they thought she could have been 65, 50, and she's 85 years old. But this is just how good she looks, and her movement and her mentality and her wisdom, it's so priceless. And I was just honored to be in the presence of such wisdom. I actually even went to a POW community where they were giving out, the awards to the wives of the husbands who were in the war and things like that. So it was another big room full of wisdom. We are going to live 1 out of 7 women to age 100. And being at 50 years old means that we at least have 40 to 50 years left, right? So we need to realize and understand that with this workforce, what we're doing in our jobs today, if we're not creating a big change, we need to, especially in our health, if we need to go step outside and get that nature dosing to get our minds to relax, we need to do that until someday when the policies change in the workplace and the corporations and universal healthcare systems can actually recognize that we have a problem. What I don't understand is in the healthcare system is why they can actually sit there. They see that their workers are growing and growing and growing, because I seen it, and I was just a tech. I would be so sad, because these girls at the front desk, they're, young. And back in the 80s, when my girls were at the front desk, these ladies were in pencil skirts, model looking, nails, everything was done. We don't see that today. We see a lot more of a digression, and it's apparent. And the people that I've seen, the insulin resistance buildup on the abdominals and things like that. They still sit in the same seating and they're still just growing because they just go to eat and then they come back and they sit down. And now, did you ever hear, well, my next conversation we're going to be talking about soon, next week. It's going to be exciting because I'm bringing in a doctor for the pelvic floor issue. This is something and an illness that has been occurring and again, historically has never been spoken about. But we're going to bring in a doctor to tell you all about what's happening with that pelvic floor and how we can create a change, because when we're sitting down, we're actually cutting off a lot of circulation that's headed to the pelvis. And this has led into a lot of incontinence, a lot of problems getting pregnant. So many issues have come out of this. And then this is something I hope you get to look up because it's another conversation I'll bring up, but it's actually the dead butt syndrome. I know that sounds crazy, but if you look it up, you're going to read all about it. And you're going to see, because of just sitting down, we lose that muscle. They lose their mind. The muscles forget what they're supposed to be doing, and that's giving us balance. And so you have to look that up because that's a very interesting subject to read about. And I love talking about it, but I really want you to read it because most of people in corporate America and in the healthcare system, they're all sitting down. And when I would see my front desks a lot, they had all kinds of spine massagers and they were getting these adjustments on their chairs to help them. And, you know, they're moving all around. They're not getting up to move around. They're not stepping out to go get that nature dose. They're not doing any of this. And now I see that they're having pelvic floor issues. So this is going to be a big subject. And I am looking to come back to this conversation about women in the workplace, corporate leaders, universal healthcare leaders, looking to you to help us women in the workplace. We'll talk about this more next week. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this gave you some kind of aha moments. And you can look up that Women in the Workplace report, and you can see what's changed and what hasn't. My biggest thing is about menopause and the policies that are not in place yet and haven't even been considered in the last 10 years. So have a great week and looking forward to coming back with a new episode on liberating menopause. Thank you, prconnectionsradio.com, for hosting me, Lisa Vasquez, your host. Have a great week. Thank you.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.